Welcome to Studio A3R, where we feature the people and the ideas that help us deepen our connection to ourselves, our community, and the world around us. I'm your host, Jennifer Sertle. In a time of constant change, I believe our greatest advantage lies in how we connect with others and make thoughtful decisions that shape a more meaningful future. This program is here to inspire you with insights that foster clarity, connection, and purpose. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Dave Zaboski, a master storyteller and visionary artist whose works have brought some of the most beloved animated films to life. As a former senior animator at Disney, yes, Disney, Sony, and Warner Brothers, David has contributed to classics like The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin. But beyond his impact in animation, he has dedicated his career to unlocking the creative potential in others. In our conversation, we'll explore the power of storytelling, the artistic process in the age of digital transformation, and how creative expression can help us navigate an ever-changing world. David, welcome to Studio A3R.
Oh, Jen, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you. I love that little intro. I felt like, did I write that? Is that my quote or is that yours? It's yours. I'm super aligned with what you're up to.
I love it. I love it. And I think what I first want to do is acknowledge Yarrow, who is he has founded Hatch a Better World. And David and I met actually at the 20th anniversary of Hatch a Better World. And I just have to give a big hug to the whole community and especially Yarrow for the opportunity for us to meet each other.
Yeah, for sure. Yarrow Craner, amazing connector and really just a human doing beautiful work in the world.
That's amazing. And for those of you, I always do a blog with this, and there's going to be a picture of Yarrow being given a beautiful signed picture that was drawn by David. Very special moment for us. So I'm going to jump right in. Is that cool?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. The power of creativity and innovation. You know, innovation is often sparked by creativity, but how do you cultivate creativity in leadership? And what roles does it play in solving complex problems?
Well, I think creativity is really connected to growth. And a lot of people talk about innovation as the thing that they want to chase after rather than creativity itself, because creativity is a little bit nebulous. And we think about innovation as sort of purposeful creativity. And I think that if you look at things like, LinkedIn's survey of the, most important qualities necessary for leadership these days, creativity came in at number 3. We're in a tumultuous time where changes are happening so rapidly, and we can't really rely on just technology to solve our problems, and think that it's really important that our human creativity stay up with the kind of changes that are happening in technology. If we use, the danger here is that we use our technology so much that it dulls our own human creativity. If we're asking chat to write a thing for us, to do these, to become a crutch for us, then we're going to get weaker at our own creativity. And I think that that's going to create a lot more challenges than benefits.
So I know, I'm going to abandon my questions a little bit because your business right now is Creatively Speaking, and it's www.creativelyspeaking.live, live. Creativelyspeaking.live. That's so interesting. Tell me about what you're doing now and who it is, the idea that can we be more creative? Can we learn creativity? What do you do with people?
Right. So listen, I come from the art world. The thing that I'm presenting is sort of notes from the world of art, dispatches from the land of the creatives. On the entrepreneurial side, a lot of the arc of learning from the entrepreneurial side, starts with sort of the Industrial Revolution of 130 or 40 years ago. And then there are thought leaders that you see throughout that period, and all of the sort of edifice of entrepreneurialism is built on that arc that runs through Napoleon Hill and the Harvard Business Review and Peter Drucker and the Stanford D School, and sort of that arc on how did they create, how do they turn their ideas into something in a capitalist system, right? An entrepreneurial and capitalist system. Well, the art world I can trace my teachers back to the Renaissance. I can go 500 years back to Verrocchio, to a string of teachers that all have handed off to each other systems, tools, and practices to turn thoughts into things at the level of imagination, right? Like to leave no doubt about, here's an idea I want to turn into reality. Here are the tools, systems, and practices that I can use to take this thought and turn it spectacularly into a thing that lasts for, generations. The Getty Museum here in Los Angeles is filled with works that have been created by prodigious imaginations using these tools, systems, and practices. And at Disney, I got this lecture that for me was the difference between being an amateur and being a pro. It's what we talked to your class about last week. These ideas from the art world about the sort of universal laws of creativity, things that all creators use, from their lines that they make in a sketchbook to the magnificent creations that end up, changing a cityscape. They map, these tools and systems and practices map onto entrepreneurialism. If you're wanting to turn a thought into a thing, I got to say, we in the art world, it's kind of our everyday water that we swim in. And so creativity is, it's not the purview of just a few special people. It's not a black box you stick a piece of paper in and then it comes out a slot with something pretty on it. One of my mentors at Disney once said to me, hey man, imagine your drawings blown up 100 times their original size, shown in front of millions of people all over the world forever. Like there's a level of pressure on that needs to be systematized in order to achieve that kind of excellence. And so there are tools and practices that we have in the art world that I think are super valuable for leadership, for teamwork, for growth and innovation, for iteration on how you bring an idea from the size of a thumbnail to the size of a screen or bigger. And so creativity is not the purview of some special few. It's in all of us. It's a practice, though. And that practice takes some knowledge and dedication and maybe mentorship and community to be able to have it flourish in the world. So I think for entrepreneurs, I got really excited about this because as an entrepreneur myself, I have these tools and practices that I think are incredibly valuable, too good to hoard. And they've been gifted to me from the greatest creatives in the 20th century from the halls of Disney.
Your deep respect for the lineage of the creativity, I think, is really beautiful. And maybe that allows you to be a channel because you're really, honoring that entire body of work that is now being used for you. I liked what you had to say here because my next thought is about the power of connection. At Studio A3R, we believe that the antidote to chaos is connection. And in your experience, how does fostering strong relationships impact leadership and decision-making? And if you tie that into your creativity.
Yeah, I think it's everything. One of the universal laws of creativity that I talk about is collaboration. And at Disney, in fact, this is a term that they say Walt Disney created himself, and we'll buy that. He used to have just his name on the credits, filmed by Walt Disney when there was a whole raft of amazing artists. But the term is called plussing. To plus something is to be in service to the trajectory of an idea, not the ego that brought it. And so when you can live in a world where plussing is part of the water you swim in, when plussing is a permission that you have in a collaborative environment, then it becomes a cultural tool, not just a mechanism. Like when you have permission to plus each other, and you are working with experts, you see this on athletic teams more than you see this in the business world. But at Disney, when I was there, you can think of it as almost as an athletic team. Like when I got hired, they were hiring 2 people a year in the animation department. Like there were 100 people that did my job in the whole world. And so we were never competing with each other. We were competing with the legacy of what came before. And those guys were monsters. So in order for us to achieve the things that we needed to do, we had to sort of subsume our ego to the greater story that we were telling. And in that space, when we plussed each other, we were really committed to making each other, to polishing diamonds with diamonds, to make each other as good as possible. If somebody saw something that they thought that they could improve, you would say, hey, do you mind if I plus this? Or you might ask, hey, I'm having some challenges on this. Can you help plus this? And the key to that is that you're asking expertise to expertise, not ego to ego. It's not somebody's authority that they plus on. It's their expertise that they plus on. And so when that happens, man, the acceleration is super exciting. I and this is kind of a mouthful, but for me, the fastest accelerant to excellence is generous collaboration. The fastest accelerant to excellence is generous collaboration. When we plus each other, we help each other climb. And, your candle doesn't get dimmer when you light another candle. So when I teach something, I get a better sense of how I would codify this. And then I've given it away to somebody. And the more I do that, the better I am at the thing that I'm teaching. So I think that plussing for me is a way for us to think about collaboration that really focuses on expanding the ideas, not just perking the people. It's a challenge that I found in the tech industry recently where everybody is so worried about them climbing a ladder. We don't often reinforce collaboration in that way. But if you look at the math, if I'm a veteran and I can do 80 units, but then it costs me 20 units to teach 3 people who do 40 units to add 20 units to their thing, I'm net 40 above, right? You can do the math later when you listen to the recording. But by me teaching somebody to get faster, if it slows me down but speeds them up, we get a net aggregate of production out of it. And so it just makes more sense. Plus, it's a lot more fun. When we animators would get together, we would look at things like Jim Carrey and his facial expressions and try to analyze them. And that sort of almost scientific laboratory exploration into our own art was so exciting. And those guys now are all masters. Everybody I worked with at Disney, it's been so fun to watch the trajectory of their careers because we knew how to plus each other, and we still do. So I see those guys at conferences or, award shows, and I mean, they're amazing now, and that just delights me.
What I love about what you're saying is that, I'm kind of conflicted. On one level, I think it's exciting when you're in a group of people that really believe in what they're doing and almost surrender themselves to the artwork or the piece of art or the outcome, whatever it may be. I'm not always in environments like that. So part of me is kind of, because the world is so frictionless, attribution is being lost, right? So I'm someone I don't mind if people use my ideas so long as I'm included in some way. Not that I have to have so how do you balance the need for attribution with credit, with generosity, or do they conflict or can they complement each other?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that they absolutely complement each other. Look, let me drop the 5 universal laws that I talk about. The first one is belief. How do you believe in something? And we use story to help people believe. The second is iteration. That is, you use the thumbnails, like I was saying before, and you iterate. The third is collaboration. You plus each other. The fourth is risk. You got to take some risks. You have to, take a leap to get over something. But the fifth is completion. Mm-hmm. And what happens with completion, when you have practices for completion, then you have practices to be able to tell a better story that circles back around and helps you believe. And one of the practices for completion is acknowledgement. And I might even argue that every conflict that this earth has ever known between humans is a product of a missed acknowledgement or an unacknowledged thing. I'm sorry that I didn't put the top back on the toothpaste, or that I bombed your village, we don't have an acknowledgement. And so that leads to a bunch of grief and incompletions, and, you try to build your next project or your next story on the rubble of the past. It's pretty hard. But if you can acknowledge, and in the movies, for example, you get a movie credit, right? And you get paid and you get whatever other things. But even just saying thank you. Hey, I love the work that you did. Thank you so much for being a contribution to what we were up to. Acknowledgement is one of the ways that allows for the continuation of the story to expand and for belief to continue. And if you're left out of that acknowledgement, or as you say, attribution, then yeah, man, there's some hard feelings. Like you want to be a contribution and be noted as a contribution. And when you're not, there's an incompletion there. And that unacknowledgement can cause some friction. So it really is one of the necessary mechanisms to be able to continue to move things forward. And we saw that really clearly in the animation industry. Like you got paid and you got acknowledged by the credit. And when you're working with a collaborative group, there's also a lot of positive reinforcement. One of the things that we've found, especially, in a business environment or in a collaborative environment, there are three main pillars that need to be addressed, and that is power, transaction, and care. Now, power, that's the hierarchy. Transaction, that's the interaction and the sort of inward and outward facing things. But care, I think, is the thing that's most missing in our environment, in our entrepreneurial environment today. The entire tech world is only interested in power and transaction, and they leave care out of it, or at least that's a broad statement. It has been some of my experience, not complete, but that care is the sort of, poor stepchild of the triad. And so if care is included, then power doesn't become a manipulative dynamic, it becomes mentorship. And care is included with transaction, well, that becomes collaboration. And care itself allows for that attribution or acknowledgement to be present as equal to power and transaction. And so when there's care, there's also this opportunity to know that the thing that you're doing is valuable on the outside, and it gives you an inner source of value, which is also important. Like, I know my worth.
Wow. Whew, I just have to, that's a lot to absorb, and it's all very beautiful. I want to pick up on the way that you framed the completion, right? Like, you didn't say there's anything wrong with it, but it was incomplete. And the language of the incompleteness, it almost evokes that it can be completed. There can be a circle made. And I think that's really interesting. The last book that I just read was called The Last Human Job by Allison Pugh. And it talks about where we're headed is that only wealthy people will be able to actually talk to humans in a customer service triad sort of situation, and the idea that care has actually become a luxury item rather than a human fundamental. I think the idea of the triad, it makes me think of a combination lock. Everybody knows you turn one to the right, 1.5 to the left, and then third to the right, and it won't open unless they're all three there, right? And so what if we have all three? If we have power and camaraderie and care, what gets unlocked if all three are together?
Oh, I think human brilliance. I think human brilliance gets unlocked. I think you don't have so this does dovetail into the internal value system that you have. And so when care is available, when care is part of this combination, I love the way you put it, so it's power, transaction, and care. When care is, and by the way, this is some of the stuff that Forrest Landry talks about, that we've gone in deep to conversations about the metaphysical philosopher Forrest Landry, if you want to look up some of his work. But what happens is there is space for internal valuation. So I know who I am. I know what my value is. I know what I offer. It's reflected from the world outside back, and I know it from the inside out. And that is one of the real challenges we face right now, because when power and transaction are only operating, then there's a tendency to diminish those who are not in the upper rising circles of power and transaction. It's why we have CEO compensation that is obscene. Like
Yeah.
those guys are not 350 times more valuable with their decision making or their intelligence. Like if you actually wanted to look at the, a spreadsheet of where their intelligence lies or their intuition lies, it's not 350 times greater than somebody else who's working in the lab. It's just not. Like the calculations are wrong. And so what ends up happening with that is that it's devaluing people, and they will do not as effective work when that happens. So you want to be productive, that this really does unlock so much when you bring care into it. It's not what they teach you at the, at the business schools these days. It's just not part of the equation. But when it's present, I mean, look at the projects that we did at Disney. We had a string of them: Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Aladdin, Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame. Like right now, the studios, when a movie's over, they just wash out a lot of the artists. One of the things that made that place work was that we had a continuity of creatives working on picture to picture. And with each one, there was more care, there was more transaction and rising of people, but there was also, more camaraderie. And that led to a better and better product.
You've talked about the lineage. You've talked about some principles and some laws. Are there certain habits that you have that cultivate your creativity?
Yeah, it's my sketchbook. In fact, I'm just starting a brand new sketchbook, and this is the first page of my sketchbook.
Oh my gosh, hold on. I got to take a screenshot. Is it for public domain or no?
Yeah.
Because our program, actually, it is audio right now. I don't have it video, but I do try and include some really pretty pictures. And oh my gosh, look at this. Yeah, it's amazing that you can do it. So tell us. So that's one of your habits.
Right. So I have practices for my own creativity, things that I do that are for me effective. So for one, like getting on a bike, right? Not with a Peloton, chasing after somebody else's rear end, but just like opening my mind up and just moving through space. Another one is my sketchbook. I draw every night. And one of the practices I have is one page is from life and one page is from my imagination. And I'm pretty balanced at that. Like I'll go to a cafe and I'll draw some people sitting around. I do it less these days because, like at the airport or at a cafe, I do it less these days because the pose is the same everywhere now. Everybody's looking at a phone. And so I'm tired of drawing everybody looking down at a thing that they're holding in their hands. And so that's a drag. But it's one of my practices is that I just will doodle in a sketchbook. And it doesn't have to go anywhere. Nobody's going to see it. I have hundreds of sketchbooks. I have on my computer, I have like sketchbook 2024, 2023. Like it goes back to, I don't know, 1995 maybe that I've scanned sketchbooks. And so I do a drawing, I scan it, and then I go through, I've got in my studio hundreds of sketchbooks. It's one of my practices. It's kind of an obsession.
Wow, that's amazing. So is there any other thing that you can just leave with the audience that may not buy that they're creative? Is there any one last thing that you can tell them that will remind them that they have more potential to be creative than they think?
Oh, yeah. If you woke up this morning and put some clothes on, you're creative. Your creativity is not a thing. It's a collection of choices. So what choices you make about how you look at the world, how you drizzle your dressing on a salad, like what? Let me put it this way. I think creativity is the ability to recognize the divine beauty of life itself. And you don't have to make marks to be able to be creative. In fact, I think that mark making, I teach drawing classes that are really seeing classes. It's not about making a mark. It's about truly seeing what's beautiful out there. The absolute ridiculous uncalculable improbability of our being here right now should shock you into the idea that there is nothing but sacred moments. Now, Hafiz says, now is the time to realize that everything that you do is sacred. And that in that place, creativity is creativity is the medium. Creativity is what happens. Don't start by trying to be creative. Start by trying to recognize the beauty of every breath and every moment.
You can't really top sacred. I mean, that's kind of a nice, beautiful way to kind of end this conversation. But I do want all of you listeners, I did hear that that life is a collection of choices. And we did hear an assignment, 2 assignments I heard from Dave. One is, who can you plus? You know, this month, I really want you to be mindful of who in your environment. Is there any way that you can plus or add to, or just think about, how can I be more generous in my work this month? And the other is there, look for someone to acknowledge and maybe send a thank you letter. No one gets snail mail anymore. And I know when I get actual mail, it's just really touching. And so I don't think we can acknowledge one another enough. So my hope is that in the month of March, you make it a priority to say, who is it I can acknowledge? And so with you being more generous, my hope is that they will, even if it's just in karma, you'll create some acknowledgement, kind of like a boomerang, right?
Right. Well, in fact, here's your homework. Test out the theory of the law of reciprocity. The law of reciprocity is do good first. Simple as that, right? Do good first, and then see what comes back. Be open to the reciprocity and test it out.
You've been listening to Dave Zaboski, master storyteller and visionary from creativelySpeaking.live. This program is sponsored by Marl Accelerator, an early stage accelerator fund for startups developing deep tech products and services for enterprise customers using 5G technology. Marl continues to foster a vibrant community of investors, founders, and corporate venture teams. There are actually 60 corporate partners, 150 follow-on VC partners, and 80 industry mentors. Thank you, Marl Accelerator, for supporting Studio A3R. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible organizations that fuel my life and inspire my work: Circle Optics, Say Hi, and Another Hatcher, India Osborne. As we navigate complexity, remember the antidote to chaos is connection. Thank you for tuning in. Seek connection. Thank you for joining us.